Define your purpose. So know why you're going after this result. Know why you're going after this vision. What is the ripple effect that this change will have? If I was to lose this much weight, how would it impact my quality of life? Would I have more confidence? Would I have more energy? Would I have more focus? If I have more confidence, how does it impact my business? How does it impact my career? How does it impact my family? Because that's the teeth, right? So the result's great, but if we don't have a purpose, we're not going to follow through. If we don't have a purpose, we're not going to be able to show up on the hard days.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Conquer the Day. I am your host, Lindsey Pickowicz.
And I am your host, Brian Pickowicz.
Today we are digging into how to get back on your A game. If you are listening to this, it is the end of quarter one. We are getting closer and closer to quarter two. And most likely, if you're listening to this, then you're not on your A game. Quite honestly, you've set up a plan. You've told yourself it's time to take action. It's time to get moving. It's time to get healthy, whatever those goals are that you have, and you haven't made any progress. Maybe you've put little things in place, but you haven't really seen the ripple effect. You don't feel like you are showing up at your best. And if that's where you're at, it's okay. And it's time to get moving. We are going to give you the exact recipe, as we like to call it, for getting on your A game, which requires us to not only get really clear on where we're going, but also give ourselves an honest look at where we are today so that we can then bridge the gap.
And I think the exciting thing about this, and I say exciting with intention, because it's exciting to know that you're not as good as you could be. It's exciting to know that there is a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And the excitement comes from knowing that you can be better. The excitement comes from seeing like, hey, I've been doing it this way, but I know that I can do so much more. I know that I'm capable of so much more. And so that's what we want to give you today. We just want to talk about being on your A game as a prerequisite for you to be like, oh my God, you're right. I haven't been doing enough. The new year isn't starting off the way that I intended. That's not what this is about. It's about identifying that there's a pathway forward that's going to give you life and give you energy and allow you to really step into every single day with energy. It's like, what would it feel like to have energy in your workplace? What would it feel like to have energy at home? What would it feel like to have energy with your kids or your grandkids? That's what happens when you're dialed in. This conversation came about because we've had so many people who are joining our team who are talking about, man, I just want to be better. I want to feel better. I want to be on my game because I know that my business and my team and my family needs me to be that way right now. I think of someone who I was talking to yesterday. It was a couple who joined our team, and they're saying, man, we've been in healthcare since COVID, and the last 3.5 years have not gone well. We're not healthy. We're not taking care of ourselves, but we can see what happens if we make this change. And so that's what we want to give you. In this recipe, we want to give you some keys that will allow you to see what the future looks like and how you can get clear on where you need to be for you to perform at your best, for you to look your best, and really start seeing the habits come together that you want in your daily life.
Mm-hmm. With that said, let's talk about this recipe. Let's be very direct so that you can start to make progress today. I would personally grab a pen and paper, or at least screenshot the show notes of this episode so that you can ask yourself these questions and give yourself at least a few minutes to jot down some answers. Right? If we try to rush our way to a result, we tend to mess it up along the way. So give yourself that pause and actually reflect. The first aspect of this A-game recipe, if you will, is to know your result. What does it actually mean, or what would it mean for you to be on your A-game? If you were to look at the end of this year and say, man, I did it. I accomplished it. I crushed it. What does that mean to you? Does it mean you've lost 40 pounds? You're now waking up full of energy and excitement for your day. You have total mental clarity. Every day feels like a win for the most part, right? Even on days where you hit wrenches or things go wrong, you're able to flex and pivot and still take care of yourself, still show up well, right? Clarify what is your 6 to 12 month vision. Where do you want to be? What do you want a day in your life to look like? Get super, super, super clear on what your result is before you take action.
And then the second thing is define your purpose. So know why you're going after this result. Know why you're going after this vision. What is the ripple effect that this change will have? So if you think of Lindsey's example, where you want your body to be, right? So we'll talk about fitness. Okay, if I was to lose this much weight, how would it impact my quality of life? Would I have more confidence? Would I have more energy? Would I have more focus? If I have more confidence, how does it impact my business? How does it impact my career? How does it impact my family? Because that's the teeth. Right? So the result's great, but if we don't have a purpose, we're not going to follow through. If we don't have a purpose, we're not going to be able to show up on the hard days. And there's been so many examples in our lives where we're pursuing a goal and it's like, man, if the purpose wasn't there, there'd be no reason to follow through. And so like Lindsey was saying, when the wrench comes, when the days become stressful, you need to be able to have that anchor, which is why I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And if you can remember that and you continue to focus on it, not only will the result become easier, but the purpose that's driving you actually becomes more fulfilling because you're like, oh, this is actually why I'm doing this. So first, know your result. Second, know your purpose.
And third, identify where you are. So many people forget this. They want to ignore where they are, where they have been, and just start moving forward. And the challenge, if you do that, is that you tend to overdo it, especially when it comes to your health and well-being. If you don't actually take a hard look at where you are, meaning where your body is, how much you weigh, what injuries you're dealing with, or even like aftermath of injuries, where your schedule's at, right? What responsibilities are on your plate, then you might way overcommit yourself and unintentionally set yourself up for failure. An example might be like I was the other day thinking about a goal I had, which was to train for a marathon in June. But once I actually mapped it out and I looked at where I am, where my body is, where my joint health is, where my schedule is, I kind of realized that it would be a big overcommitment, and it would take me away from a lot of the things that I have on my plate right now that I want to work on. And if I didn't look at where I was, I probably would have skated right through that and said, I'll figure it out along the way. A lot of people do that when they're first getting back into fitness, and they end up either getting hurt, they overdo it, they fail, they get frustrated with themselves, and then it takes another 4 months to get anywhere. So really look at where you are as like that almost step number 3. Where are you? Where's your body? Where's your schedule? What can you realistically commit to right now is kind of the follow-up question. Once you know where you are, then you can move on to step 4.
And I'm going to pivot to Lindsey's point for a moment, just to kind of bring this to light. So Lindsey had the result in her mind, oh, maybe I'll run a marathon, right? There was some other elements to that result, and the purpose in her mind was to be disciplined. Is that accurate?
Yeah, be in good shape.
Be in good shape, be disciplined. And then when she thought of those goals and that purpose, she came back to where she was and she said, well, is that really what I need to do right now? Because I have these other goals that are more important, quite frankly, than this goal, because she's obviously, look at her, she's in fantastic shape. But when she sat with that, I was in the room and she's like, Brian, like, is this really like, do you think this is wise? And we kind of played it out, and what we came to was, well, maybe you could run a half marathon and that would meet the goal and the purpose, but it would be a better way to use your time, and it'd be honestly better for your energy. You won't be as stressed because to commit to that big of a goal in this season of life for us probably doesn't make any sense. So that's a way you can think about it too. Like maybe your goal is to lose 40 pounds. Maybe the purpose is to have confidence, but maybe you're like, wow, like quite frankly, my habits are nowhere close to the way I would have to operate to hit that target. So that's
at
fine.
least in like a given time period.
Yes.
Like, I want to do that in 4 months. It's like, oh, well, based on where your body is today and how far you have to go, perhaps you need a little more time.
And that's okay. But the point is that actually allows you to confront reality.
Yes.
And we need to, we want to have a vision that's inspiring. We want to have a purpose that's fulfilling, but we also want to know where we are because that's where we're going to build from.
Yep.
So I just wanted to give that little example because it's really important. Like we're in the journey with you. We're humans. We're part of this process, and we're giving this not just as like a spitfire, hey, here, go do this for yourself. We're actually living it. Mm-hmm. But the fourth point that's going to come through, so you know what your result is, you know why you're doing it, you've met yourself where you're at. What we need to do then is start to define the gap. And so if you know where you are, you know where you want to be, there's always this gap in between. And the gap is a set of problems. And those sets of problems are things you must solve for in order to make progress towards that goal. And so the problem might be your relationship with food. It might be your schedule and how you manage it. It might be your joint health. It might be how you currently take care of your body. Maybe you don't go to the gym at all, so you're going to have to really ease your way back in. But what's great about this is you can start to solve each one of those problems and strategize a system to get results. And now there's a part of this that's painful because you have to confront the truth. And confronting the truth might mean that you have to extend your timeline. I remember when I first did my first bodybuilding competition, I'd put on 60 pounds when I was in college. I was playing defensive line. I'd gotten big. I was training hard. And I was like, man, I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition. So in my mind, I looked at where my body was. I looked at the goal, and I said, well, I'll lose like 20 pounds. And I had no idea what I was actually getting into. So in my mind, I was like, oh, let's take like 3 months or 4 months to lose 20 pounds. I'll be stage ready. That was not the truth. I had so much body fat because I was so big and I had been eating so much food that when I lost the 20 pounds, I realized I was nowhere close to where I actually needed to be. And so that was painful. That was painful to realize that this is going to take me longer and it's going to be harder than I intended. But it didn't mean I had to change the target. It just meant I had to change the timeline. And so it ended up actually taking me 7.5 months, but I won the contest. And that's the key, is you might have to confront the fact that you stress eat. That's okay. You can work on it. But it's going to change the approach, because instead of saying, oh, I need to lose 40 pounds, like, actually, I need to work on my stress eating. It might be that you can't run right now because your joints hurt. It's like, okay, well, then you need to work on your mobility, and that's fine. But it's really important that when we are identifying where we're going, we see that gap as something that was building awareness around who we are and where we are too.
As you're defining the gap, very important, you're not looking for solutions here. The gap is filled with all of the reasons that you are not already at your target, which might be like, I don't have time. I'm too tired. I'm too stressed. I have too much on my plate. I have this. And it's going to sound like you're writing down a bunch of excuses. See them, rather than seeing them as excuses, see them as challenges. That change of mind is actually going to be much more empowering, because if you see them as a list of challenges, then you'll see them as things that perhaps you can overcome, as opposed to being like, oh, here's all my excuses. I just got to get rid of those. That's not giving those challenges the credit that they deserve, because they are genuinely challenging, right? So when you are defining that gap, it's not, all right, I need to work on my mobility. Like Brian said, that might be the solution, but you might not know that yet. So don't expect that you're going to like start writing down all these solutions, all these new ways that you can get to your goal. No. We're just going to figure out what are all of the habits and behaviors that are in place that run you in the opposite direction from your goals right now, which might be stress eating, for example. Okay. I just wanted to close that gap. So that is that next step is figuring out what's in the gap, so that you can then take the final 2 steps of the recipe and put it all together into a great little meal. Next step, start small. If you've identified 30 things inside of your gap that are challenges, then try to find 1 to 2 habits, small behaviors, that if you did them every day, they would move you a little closer to your goal. At the Fitness Project, we talk about this with our clients a lot, and we call it your keystone habits. These are the habits that, if you do them, they tend to lead to better, healthier decisions throughout the day. They tend to change your behavior over the rest of the day. For you, what are your 1 to 2 habits that you can work on that will have that ripple effect in your day, in your week, in your life? Those little habits are going to give you a lot of momentum so that you can move on to the final step of the recipe to get on your A game.
And a simple example of a keystone habit is taking 5 minutes to stretch in the morning. A simple example of a keystone habit is drinking a glass of water as soon as you wake up before you drink coffee. These small habits have a way of compounding because they influence the rest of the day. And so when we talk about building small habits that meet you where you're at, it's not necessarily the case that you have to say, I'm going to go and work out for an hour today or twice a week or whatever. It's more important that they're small actions, take less than 5 to 10 minutes to do, but that you can repeatedly hit. And if you do that, you can build other habits on top of them. But it's really important when we talk about building a keystone habit, it's the 1 or 2 small tweaks that we can put into our morning to create a ripple effect across the day.
Mm-hmm. Last piece of this recipe here is if we're going to start small, then we need to outsource the big. Another way to say this is seek support for the big. What is the big? The big are the big things, the strategy, what am I going to do for the next 9 months to hit this 50-pound weight loss target, right? What am I going to do for the next year to accomplish these goals that I have and these dreams that I've put in my mind, or even the next 3 months, right? What am I going to do? Those are the big things, right? Those are your training plan. Those are your nutrition approach. Those are your overarching lifestyle changes that you need to compound over time, or even the mindset changes, quite honestly, that you need to make.
The sense of accountability.
The personal development that's required to actually become that fit, healthy person that is just on their A game every day. That is a whole new level, right? Especially in this season of life. So seek support. It doesn't have to be us at the Fitness Project, but seek support. Don't try to do those things by yourself. Don't try to wing them and throw things at the wall. That is not a recipe for success over the long haul, especially if you're super clear on your result.
If you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, it's really important that you reflect, are the people you're spending time with currently helping you be on your A game, or are they detracting from it? It doesn't mean you have to remove those people, right? If they're family, if they're friends, if they're coworkers, but you can always add people. Mm-hmm. And so when Lindsey talks about getting the right support, it's adding yourself to circles of influence that inspire you. It's pulling in a mentor that can actually guide you towards the result that you want. It's maybe changing the people that you're listening to on social media, right? That's another way to pull in someone who can support you, is by changing the things that you're focusing on daily. Because if you're the sum of those 5 people, you have to ask, are the people I'm spending the most time with helping pull out the best of me, or are they pulling out the worst of me? And the great thing about that recognition is that you can change that just by making a few phone calls, just by taking a few actions in the right direction to pull more people in your space.
Yep. So that's really the recipe. If you want to get on your A game, you got to know your result. You got to know why you're moving towards it. You need to really be clear on where you are today. Give yourself that little bit of grace and face reality. Define what's in the gap, and then start small. Get moving on a couple of keystone habits. And then as you start small and you gain momentum, then seek out support for those big pieces of your journey, those strategic elements that need more expertise or that need more accountability. Pull good people into your corner that know what they're doing. And for you, if you're in this position where you've gone through the first couple months of the year, you don't feel like you're on your A game, but now you feel like, all right, it's time for me to go, and you need that support, then we are more than happy to help you at the Fitness Project. And we would love to connect with you and actually get to have a phone call with you. We had a call with somebody who listened to the podcast and basically gave us a ring. And it was so good to hear from him. For him, it felt like he was just talking to friends, which we love to hear. But for us, that means the world, because we get to actually step into your life and help you beyond just giving you podcasts. So regardless of whether or not you'd like to become a client, we are more than happy to do a strategy session with you to talk about the frameworks and the methods that we use for our clients that help them get on their A game and build a healthier lifestyle. With that said, there's going to be a link in the show notes or in the comment section where you can click to book a call with myself. Most likely, it could be Brian. You might get surprised if he jumps in, but usually it's going to be with me personally. And I would love to talk to you about what you're doing right now and maybe where your strategy can improve. But with that said, we hope that this is helpful. We hope it's direct enough for you and that you can use it to go out and conquer your day.
So if you love this podcast, give it a thumbs up on YouTube. Let us know your big takeaway in the comment section below. And if you're listening to us on Apple, love to see your shout out as well. So feel free to screenshot it and post on your stories. Let us know your big takeaway. But thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for listening. We hope this is valuable. And like Lindsey said, go out and conquer your day.
Cheers.
Cheers.